On Beacon of Truth with Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers starts now.
In confusion and uncertainty, there emerges a guiding light, a beacon that cuts through the darkness. Welcome to Beacon of Truth with your host, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers.
Hello, and welcome back to Beacon of Truth. I am your host, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, and here we are, the new week. New opportunity to draw closer to God's love, to be drawn deeper into His most sacred heart, to draw closer in intimacy with the Holy Spirit, and we're here to help you do just that. Why? Because ultimately our faith is rooted and grounded in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and the life, through whom no one comes to the Father. And so we're here to celebrate that. We're here to celebrate our Catholic faith. And today on Beacon of Truth, we're starting off this week by talking about dating for matrimony. Okay? Not the dating of the culture, the hookup culture, the one-night stand culture, the hit it and quit it culture. No. We're talking about dating for matrimony, preparing to receive a sacrament of the Holy Catholic Church that will last for your entire life during the ups and downs and trials and tribulations of marriage. So how do you date in preparation for marriage? That's what we're talking about today on Beacon of Truth. Would love to hear from you. Be part of the program today. You can give us a call at 833-288-3986. Again, that's 833-288-3986. You can also email us, beacon@EWTN.com, or you can now text the letters EWTN to 58177. Again, 58177. Wait for a response and text us your first name and your brief question. Remember that message and data rates may apply. Well, if you were listening to the show last week, you know that this past weekend I went on the Deacon Retreat for Deacons of the Archdiocese of Portland. Well, about a third of us. The retreat center can't hold all of us, for one. And second, they're giving a choice. They want to try and get the most participation possible. So we have two dates, one in May and one in November. And for my schedule, May works better for me. And so I went, and it was great to see the guys. First of all, for me personally, it's definitely what I needed after a very busy Lent and the beginning of Easter as far as speaking and traveling. You know, I hit about 40,000 miles. I looked. I actually looked. I got about 40. Just under 41,000 miles in just the past 3 months. So that's a lot. So yeah. So it was. I wanted to take a break, and so to go on retreat, and for me to just disappear and be one of the guys. You know, not having people ask for autographs, or not people just wanting to be with me because I'm Deacon Harold, whatever that means, just so I can be with the guys, just be one of the guys, you know. That was just great. And also to pray with the monks. You know, this was held at Mount Angel Abbey, a Benedictine abbey of the Swiss congregation. So they were founded from Switzerland. And so I brought my choir robe, which I got in Belgium. And I prayed with the monks, wearing my choir robe, which, you know, it's a long black kind of, how you describe it? It's like a long black vestment with long arms, deep hood, like a deep hood, heavy material. And that's what I pray in most of the time when I'm home. And so when I go on retreat, I bring that. So, you know, because you kind of feel wrapped in prayer. It helps me to block out all the distractions, just focus on entering more deeply into that prayer life and that intimacy with God. And to do that with the monks there at Mount Angel was a special blessing. And plus the retreat itself, the content was excellent. The presenter was the retreat master was Deacon Dominic Serrato, who is the head of the diaconate program in the Diocese of Joliet in Illinois, and he is the editor of The Deacon, which is our magazine. There's a magazine called The Priest, for priests, and there's a magazine called The Deacon, which is published by Our Sunday Visitor. And he did a fantastic job. I've been ordained, November will be 22 years. And this is one of the best retreats we've ever had that I've been on. It was fantastic. I was completely engaged in all of the talks, because sometimes you kind of space out, I've heard this before, whatever, but not this time. This was absolutely fantastic. And he focused on, in one of the talks, a relationship between priests and deacons, because that could be a very strained relationship. And as I mentioned during the show on Friday, that there's a movement now by some in the church to separate the diaconate from the priesthood. And why they're doing that, they want to ordain women deacons. And so they've tried and tried and tried, didn't work. Now they're trying to separate diaconate from priesthood, and the holy is not make a part of holy orders, the threefold hierarchical structure in the church established by Christ, and the way he showed that. In fact, I'm going to have him on because it was so powerful, just to get everyone a deeper understanding of the connection between the diaconate, and because Jesus established the priesthood, but he also established the diaconate. He also established the diaconate at the Last Supper. And the way he showed that was amazing. So, the whole time I was listening, I was thinking of scriptures. I was like, yeah, he can, build on it. It was fantastic. So we're definitely going to be talking about that at a future show. But I want to thank you all for your prayers. There's some listeners sent me some emails wishing me God's blessing on the retreat. And it was exactly what and the quiet. You know what I loved the most, honestly? The quiet. The silence. Oh, man. I love being by myself. I spent tons of time in adoration. I spent tons of time in silence and prayer. I love that. That's probably what I miss most about monastic life when I was in, is that, and just to have a weekend where I could just focus on that. No computer, no tech. I had my cell phone because I had the schedule for the retreat was on the phone, but I had it on silent the whole time. I did not look at emails, nothing. It was awesome. And so actually looking forward to the next retreat next year. But this is a great reminder. We need to take some time to separate ourselves from the world and spend that time with God. Now, for us as deacons and for priests, it's a canonical retreat. So, in other words, it's required by canon law that we go on retreat every year. For deacons, it's 3 days. For priests, it's 5 days. But all of us, everyone, layperson, everybody should spend some time away. There was a man there, actually, that I'd like everybody to pray for. He was there on a private retreat. So he was there by himself, without his family, just him. And he, during the meals, you could talk. So we sat down. He sat down with us. He didn't realize that we were, because obviously we're not wearing clerics, so he didn't realize that we were all deacons. But he sat down, introduced himself. We told him why we were here at Deacon's Retreat. And he said, should I move to another table? No, you're good. You stay with us, And so he was telling us why he was there. His wife is seeking a divorce, and he doesn't want that. So he's there taking some time apart. Even Jesus said, come away, but let's go away by ourselves for a while. Just to get out of the world, get out of the dreariness, the darkness, the everyday routine, and just enter more deeply into that space with Christ, so that special place in our hearts that are created by God, that space where God resides in our hearts, to feed that, just like you have to exercise a muscle in order for it to grow, we have to exercise, in a sense, that heart muscle, allow that God, that room and that space to work in our hearts and in our lives. And so he was there really looking at himself, looking at his life. He was getting spiritual direction from the monks. Is there something I could be doing better in this relationship and all of that? And they've been going to counseling and all that too. But he felt he needed to come away and just really take a deep dive into himself, which I commend him for. A lot of guys won't do that. They'll just give up, or they'll just, follow the culture, the divorce culture. So please keep them in your prayers, and then all my brother deacons as well, and those who are going to be going on retreat later this year. Well, this show is brought to you by some amazing people. Matt Gabinski screening calls, Charles Berry doing social media, and Ace McKay producing today. How you doing, Ace?
I'm doing good. I have to say, I don't know that I could go with silence for an entire weekend. A break from social media and technology, I think I could easily buy into. So with that in mind, I'm gonna take your advice, but I still need my tunes. That's my meditative state of relaxing.
Well, the monks sang a lot during the thing, so
okay.
that's what might be good for me.
I'll go with a little monk chant. That's good.
All right. Well, today we're talking about dating for matrimony. The phone number to the call is 833-288-3986.
On Thursday, join thousands of students, families, and Canadians from all walks of life as we gather on Parliament Hill in Ottawa for the 2024 National March for Life.
I will never forget you. You're my child.
EWTN's live coverage of Canada's March for Life starts Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern on EWTN television.
This is a Messy Family Minute with Mike and Alicia Hernan. If you're looking for a gift to give your spouse that's not fattening or expensive, listen in. This is one of the most precious things you have, but you can give it to them every day. Do you know what it is? Your time.
Do you have time every day where you and your spouse check in and connect together? If you don't, start brainstorming right now about when you can fit it in. Maybe when you both arrive home, you can take a few minutes to step in private just to ask how our day was. Maybe it's getting a few minutes earlier in the morning to make coffee together. It doesn't need to be long, but it does need to happen every day. If you and your spouse are ships passing in the night during a busy season of life, take at least 5 minutes alone to hug, talk, check in, and connect.
A successful marriage is made up of little things like this. Commit to having a daily connection with your spouse. It may turn out to be the most important gift you've ever given. To find out more about connecting with your spouse, visit us at messyfamilyminute.org.
All right, a little upbeat music, get the week going. Yeah, you can move to that.
Kind of felt like, this is like a stretch. It's like, hey, oh.
Yeah.
You don't really want to be in my mind on a regular basis when I'm listening to these things. What made you choose that one? I ain't telling you.
Love that. Well, you can start your week off feeling good by this outstanding music that we play at the beginning of the segments. And you're listening to Beacon of Truth. I am your host, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, and you're listening on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. And today's topic, we're talking about dating for matrimony. Not dating for part of the hookup culture, but dating for matrimony. Obviously, prior to being engaged, what should dating look like as a preparation for marriage? Not looking for compatibility, like a partner, like a law firm. That's what you do for a law firm. You look for compatibility. And I don't like that term partner, by the way. It sounds too legalistic to me, or it sounds like it could be amalgamated with a lot of other things. But dating for matrimony. Love for you to be part of the program today. Give us a call, 833-288-3986. Again, that's 833-288-3986. And this show is brought to you by some great EWTN folks working behind the scenes. Charles Berry doing social media, Matt Gabinski screening calls, and that awesome music brought to you by the producer, Ace McKay.
Want to let you know that you can hang it on the cross. It is something you can find available at the EWTN RC catalog right now. I mean, imagine some of the things as we talk about relationships and marriage today. What are some of the things that are burdening you, some of the losses that you're just facing? Well, you can hang it on the cross. Find out more about that when you check it out. Available now at EWTNRC.com. I've got free standard shipping for online orders, $75 or more. All you have to do is, of course, use the code word FREE at checkout.
All right. Well, it is time to reflect on God's word in the Psalms. And as always, we're using the Revised Grail Psalms, approved for use in the church and the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, prepared by the Benedictine monks of Conception Abbey. And if your translation doesn't follow along with what I'm reading, that's fine. Whatever Bible you have, just pick it up and open up the Psalms. Today we're looking at Psalm 119, which is the longest of all the Psalms. And and it's broken down, as I mentioned, with the 22 letters of the Jewish alphabet. And this one we're looking at Chait, all right, the Chait strophes of Psalm 119. That's verses 57 to 64. So Psalm 119, verses 57 to 64. And what Psalm 119 is an extended reflection on the law of God. Right, on God's law, which is beautiful, because the law is not just God dictating to us what we can't and can't do. It's a law of love. It's a law of relationship. It's the part of that connecting with the natural moral law, which is that part of God's eternal law that is within us, where we can come to know who God is by reason alone. And I love reflecting on the Psalms. So we're going to look at, again, the Chait strophe. And Chait, by the way, is the 8th letter of the Jewish alphabet, and you have to pronounce it that way. It's Chait. So it's, as I mentioned when I was introducing the Psalms in the early shows of Beacon of Truth, that in Hebrew there are letters that are glottal stops. So we don't have those in English. But in Hebrew they do, and so you have to really pronounce the letter from your throat. So it's Chait. It sounds like you're get ready to spit or something like that, but actually it's the way you pronounce the word Chait. And so it starts in verse 57. I have said, O Lord, my portion is to obey your words. Now this should, especially if you're paying attention to the readings at Mass this past Sunday, you remember Jesus was talking about love. All the readings were focusing on the love of God. And Jesus said, if you love me, you keep my commandments. Right? Now, notice, he says, if you're going to be a slave to me, if you're going to obey me, then you obey my commandments. No, we follow God's commandments out of love because we love him. That's why we keep his commandments. Why? See, teenagers often think of directives that come from their parents like rules that inhibit their freedom. No, we give our kids rules because we love them. We give our kids rules because we love them. Don't run out in the street, because they don't know, oh, the ball's out there, I'm just going to go and get it. They're not thinking, you know what, there may be a car coming down the street that's driving a little bit too fast. They may not be able to stop in time to see me. They don't have enough life experience. They don't have enough wherewithal to be able to do it. So we have to give them rules. Don't eat dessert first before your meal, right? Because you don't want them so filled with all the sweets and the sugar that their body's not prepared to receive healthy food. So there's all kinds of rules that we give our children, not because we're trying to be the boss of them or control them, but because we love them.
Yeah, and it's proven statistically that kids need that structure. And so the thing we have to remind ourselves is that even when we feel like we're being too harsh or that we're, repeating ourselves time and time again, how many times did we have to be told by our parents before it sunk in? Turn off the light when you leave the room, sweep the floor when you make a mess, like all of those things. Plus, I like to remind my children they're not going to live with me forever. So at some point you have to take this and go and raise your own children. So, go be free, but learn this first, so don't feel like you're being too hard on them. Just, keep driving the point.
Yeah, because we're creating life lessons for them that they're going to bring into their own families one day.
Yep.
And they'll see the value of that. And remember, we're God's children. So he can speak. The Lord can speak to us this way because we're his children.
And he repeats himself to us often. Have you thought about that? I mean, how many times, at some point he has to go, okay, we've had this talk. But I mean, I know for me personally, he has had time and time again. We've talked about this. Or if he points me back to a verse, to me, I see that as like a parent going, remember we talked about this? Remember we talked about this? And at some point it sinks in and you go, oh. So the only disagreement I would say with you, though, is I let my kids eat their dessert first because they're teenagers. They eat everything. So I stopped using that rule years ago because they're like, I'm going to eat all of it. I was like, okay, fine.
Well, especially if you have boys, man. God, they're like eating machines, man. Like the fridge is always empty, man. Woo! I tell you, I love that. So we continue in verse 58. With all my heart I implore your favor, as with your promise have mercy. Right? So God realizes, as Ace was saying, that we are children. Sometimes we're slow to pick up on things. Sometimes we need to be told things over and over again before it sinks in. Not just into our heads, but into our hearts. Where we're not just hearing the words, but the words are sinking into our hearts and we're starting to live from that word. Right? That we're starting to live from that word. And that's why God is patient. And that's why God is loving. And in here we see the psalmist recognizing the merciful love of God as well. Verse 59, I've pondered my ways and turned my steps to your decrees. I made haste. I did not delay to obey your commands. So now the psalmist is reflecting on his behavior. He's reflecting on the path that he's been walking in life. You know, I could walk by myself, or I could walk with the Lord. And he realizes, I turn my steps to your decrees. He recognizes that life is better when I walk with the Lord rather than walking by myself. When I walk with the Lord, I did not haste because he recognizes the power of walking with the Lord, even if that means walking away from the culture. You know, and Jesus says, I mean, you may have to walk away from some family members, at least for a time, you know, because the truth causes division. He said, you think I've come to bring peace? I've come to bring the sword, father against son, mother against daughter, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, right? I mean, the truth divides even families, but we still have to walk in the way of the Lord, no matter what, because the way of the Lord will always lead us to our ultimate end, our ultimate purpose, our ultimate meaning of life. And we enter into that space and walk with the Lord when we obey his commands. You know, not our commands that want to focus ourselves. And I say this all the time. How love really works, the idea of sacrificial love is when you give yourself away in love is when you truly find yourself in God. You know, on Beacon of Truth, you'll hear me say that over and over again where I reflect on God's love. That's something I came up with several years ago as I was writing a talk and in adoration. You know, that's why I spend a lot of time in adoration. These things come to me. People say, where'd you get that? Or how did you make that connection? When you take that time, that space to walk with the Lord in everyday life, but especially that time in adoration, then your will and your mind and your heart become more synced with God's will, God's mind, and God's heart. Verse 61. Though the nets of the wicked ensnare me, your law I did not forget. Look, that's why we got the sacrament of reconciliation. Sometimes we get caught up in the snare of our desires, of our passions, of our emotions, which causes us to, in a sense, separate ourselves from God, either, you know, through venial sin, just a small separation, or a deeper separation, which requires the sacrament of reconciliation in mortal sin, a separation of us from God, the loss of sanctifying grace. You know, so sometimes we get caught up, but your law I did not forget. So even though sometimes our feelings and emotions, concupiscence takes over, you know, God has given us his Spirit to allow us to come back to him. To recognize that the prodigal son, we recognize our weakness, we recognize our faults, and we return wholeheartedly to the Lord. I love this. At midnight, I will rise and thank you for your just decrees. You know, it's a verse like this where in the monastic tradition, monks get up in the middle of the night, and literally the Carthusians, who follow the rule of St. Bruno, they still do this. Their day literally starts at midnight. So they take this verse seriously. And you have Cistercians or Trappists, as they're called, who usually get about 2 o'clock or 2:30 in the morning to pray matins or vigils. That's when their day starts. And then, for a lot of monks, maybe it's 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. So if you have an active apostolate, it's probably a little bit later. But the idea, and not, this is necessary, but we all have to get up because a lot of us have to go to work, and you're not going to get up at midnight to thank the Lord. But sometimes if you can't sleep, people say that to me all the time. Deacon, I found you in EWTN because I couldn't sleep. And so I turned the channel, and there you were. Great. And I'm a cure for insomnia. And then finally, oh Lord, your merciful love fills the earth. Teach me your statutes. God's omnipotence and omnipresence is not a place where he isn't, especially in our hearts. So when we come back, we're going to talk about dating for matrimony on Beacon of Truth with your host, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers.
EWTN Radio is seeking a dynamic radio producer to join the EWTN radio team in Irondale, Alabama. The right candidate will be a passionate, multi-skilled, talented professional who can manage and direct all aspects of producing world-class programming and play an integral part in Mother Angelica's mission. If this is you or someone you know, email a resume and cover letter, including salary requirements, to Human Resources at EWTN.com.
If you missed any of today's show or want to share it with someone, you can find Beacon of Truth on demand at EWTN.com/radio.
This is Life Issues with Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute.
Why would they do that? It's a question California Republican State Senator Shannon Grove is asking her Democrat colleagues on the Public Safety Committee. She sponsored a bill to add penalties for soliciting sex from a minor. It added up to 4 years prison time, up to a $25,000 fine, and those convicted to register as sex offenders. Her Democrat colleagues introduced amendments to water down the penalties. Senator Grove asked the chairman if he was forcing these amendments on her, and he replied yes. There were audible gasps from trafficking survivors in the audience. Abortion is the grease that keeps sex trafficking in motion. Back to the senator's question. Why not put people in prison for buying children? They're protecting their own.
Follow us on social media at Life Issues Institute.
24/7 Catholic Radio, this is EWTN.
On the next More to Life, breaking free.
Need to make a change? Feeling stuck? Let us help you find the grace-filled solutions you need to break free.
That's on the next More to Life. Now back to Beacon of Truth with Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers.
Yeah.
It's the subtlety of the ham and bee in there. It's good.
Yeah, I was just saying that ham. I really like that patch. That's cool. So what is that? Is he playing a closed hi-hat? Is that what that I'm hearing? Because it doesn't sound like a ride cymbal at all.
Yeah, no,
that's a closed hi-hat.
Yep.
Okay. Because it sounded muted. It wasn't ringing like a ride cymbal does, but it didn't sound like an open hi-hat where you hear the almost like a breath.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's just
I like
tight.
that.
He's just got that clamp down. Just
yeah. Like that bass line too. Nice.
All the layers make it taste good.
That's it. Layering. That's so cool. God, what's that song I was thinking of? That Barry Manilow song, like "Come Into My Arms, Let Me Know the Wonder." That is a song that I think is quintessential example of a song that builds.
Sure.
Because the song's halfway over, and you still haven't heard bass or drums yet.
Yeah.
And the song's halfway done. Because he's still building all the way to this crescendo near the end when the French horn comes in. Oh, it's just amazing. Anyway, you listen to Beacon of Truth, and I'm your host, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers. And today we're talking about dating for matrimony. How are we preparing our children? When I say when the children start dating, what do we mean by that? Dating. What does dating mean? Or maybe you're a young adult. You're dating. What does that mean? What we're talking about is preparing to receive the sacrament of matrimony. Dating is discernment. That's what it is. Dating is discernment. So we're going to talk about that. We'd love you to be part. Maybe you can share your experience, your dating experience, what you've done to prepare yourself for the sacrament of matrimony. What does a dating relationship look like? What it should look like as a person of faith, as opposed to what it looks like in the culture, where in every movie or television, after 10 minutes, they're coming together physically, something like that. Let's take a look at what that should look like in preparation for matrimony. The number to call is 833-288-3986. Again, that's 833-288-3986. You can also email us at beacon@ewtn.com, or you can text the letters EWTN to 58177. Wait for a response and text your first name and your brief question. Message and data rates may apply. And you heard that awesome music there in the beginning that was brought to you by our producer, Ace McKay.
I want to say congratulations to Bernadette and her great team at Cleveland Catholic Radio. They're great friends because they're a part of the EWTN family and celebrating at The Rock AM 1260 in Cleveland, 9 years with EWTN. So big ups to Bernadette and the team there.
Yeah, congratulations, and thank you for your continued commitment to EWTN. All right, well, dating for matrimony. First of all, let's look at dating in the culture, right? In light of truth and freedom. Jesus Christ, the truth that sets us free, talks about following God's law, and God gives us that law through the scriptures and through his church, the church that Christ founded, and freedom. What does it truly mean to be free? So let's take a look at it in light of that. So first of all, I think dating in the culture sets unrealistic expectations for marriage, right? You have, for example, couples that live together. It's almost ubiquitous now, right? You see this on television, movies. It's just no big deal. Yeah, we meet, we go on a few dates, and then next thing you know, let's live together, and then no talk about marriage or anything like that at all. And so what that does, the dating in the culture, sets unrealistic expectations of marriage, because you get lulled into complacency into thinking, well, living together is just like marriage, except we don't need the piece of paper, quote unquote, piece of paper. We don't, stop. It is nothing like marriage, okay? Because why? You can always get out. You can always get out. If something goes wrong, you can always leave because you're not committed to the person. Just because you sleep with them doesn't mean that you're committed. Just because you have the same bank account doesn't mean you're committed, right? Because you are not making God the heart, the focus, and the center of that married life. So, for example, you're living together. So I do this all the time when I have couples that come before me for marriage preparation are living together. And they think it's no big deal. This is a 21st century. The church is stuck in the Middle Ages. The church should get with the times. All the people you're preaching out there to, they don't believe this. They don't care. The church is blah, blah, blah. And so I hit him like this. I said, look, I said to the guy, I said, do you plan on having intercourse with anyone other than your wife after you get married? And he goes, no, of course not. Well, why? You're doing it now. You have a relationship with someone you're not married to. Oh, come on, man. Of course we're going to get married. We're in love. We're in love, and we're going to be together forever, and all that kind of stuff. And one guy even said, check this out. One guy even said, well, you have to test drive the car before you buy it. He actually said that to me. And so I said, okay, well, let me see if I understand what you're saying. So you get married to your beautiful fiance here, and then you guys are married for a month. You're getting used to the feel of your ring on your finger and calling each other husband and wife and all that cool stuff. But sadly, there's a horrific traffic accident. Your wife gets hit by a drunk driver. She becomes a quadriplegic. You have to spoon feed her, change her diapers, no sex for the rest of your life. That's what you're preparing yourself for? That's what you're ready for? And every single time, without fail, his fiance, she'll turn to him and look at him like, I want to hear this too. and he like, or sometimes he'll just do a week. Yeah. Very unconvincing. Why? Now, what happened? I trapped him. Because if he says, yes, I'll stay with it, he's thinking to himself, I'm 25 years old. I have my whole life ahead of me. I don't want to be stuck changing diapers of my wife after an accident like that for the rest of my life. No way. But, but why? She's sitting right there, right? If he says no, she goes, well, wait a minute. Does he really love me? Because she's thinking, she's in some fantasy world. She's thinking, oh, we're just going to live together, and then he's going to sweep me off my feet, and we're going to have a nice wedding. I'm going to look so beautiful. We're going to ride off on a horse off into the sunset. And that's what she's thinking, because she's giving her body for love. And he's thinking, man, I pay half the rent. I can still hang out with my friends. I'm not committed. Something happens, I can always get out of here. And so he's having sex to satisfy his own desires, his own lusts, And so they're using each other. They're mutually using each other in that relationship. And that's not what actual preparation for matrimony is all about. This whole idea of friends with benefits, using each other as objects for pleasure and gratification. Because what happens with couples in preparation for intercourse is the release of certain chemicals, vasopressin in men, oxytocin in women, and these are bonding chemicals. See, God knows what He's doing, and that's why this happens in the context of a committed relationship with matrimony, where God is the heart and center of that relationship. We're talking about dating for matrimony. What should that look like as people of faith, as opposed to the culture? Would love to hear from you. Maybe you went through this. I mean, you're married now, but maybe you went through this dating experience. Maybe you tried one of those Catholic online dating services. Maybe, you set standards and you will not allow those standards to weaken at all. Maybe you're a little older and you're still waiting for the right spouse to come along. Whatever your situation is, would love to hear from you today. The phone number to call is 833-288-3986. Again, that's 833-288-3986. So dating for marriage, what should that look like? So in a contemporary dating situation, I think there are some things that definitely need to happen between the two, between the young man and the young woman, or even older. I met a guy not too long ago at a parish. He was in his, I think, 40s and being married for the first time. And so, God works in His time. But there's some things I think that need to happen. First of all, praying together. Praying together. Again, just as a couple coming together, just praying together, I think is important. If you're able to go to daily mass, go to daily mass together, adoration together, praying things like the rosary. If you're going to pray the rosary together, doing going to a parish Bible study together, doing programs like, God's Plan for a Joy-Filled Marriage by Ascension Press or something like that. And even in your individual prayer, praying that is this the person that God has placed in my life to help me get to heaven, right? These are the questions we need to be asking. Is this the person God has placed in my life to help me get to heaven? And there's certain things and behaviors that need to happen during this dating relationship. For example, how do you dress? How do you dress? Women have to remember that guys are very visual. Right? They're very visual. So they take in information. And that's why pornography is such a huge issue, because we're very visually focused as men. And we have to remember the scriptures on this. Matthew 5, part of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, very early, he says, I say to you, everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in her heart. So if you're in a dating relationship, as a woman, you want to remember that you want to dress modestly. You want him to focus on you as a person and not just your physical attributes. You want him to focus on you as a person, as an individual made in God's image and likeness. Because, sic transit gloria mundi, Cicero once said, so passes the glory of the world. That spectacular six-pack ab body you have now, that ain't going to last. That's not going to last. So when the body starts to fade, what are you going to be left with? You're going to be left with your heart, that heart-to-heart connection, intimate, personal, loving, life-giving communion. And Paul in 1 Timothy chapter 2 says, women should adorn themselves with proper conduct, with modesty and self-control. All right? Beautiful. So we're talking about dating for marriage, for matrimony today on Beacon of Truth. The phone number to call to be with us today is 833-288-3986. Again, that's 833-288-3986. Just like Catherine has done, calling us from South Carolina, listening on Sirius XM 130. Catherine, welcome to Beacon of Truth.
Hi, this is Catherine. Is this Deacon Harold?
Yes, this is Deacon Harold.
I called. I heard it talking about. I'm sure you're talking about meeting your spouse and dating for marriage.
Yes.
I am 32. As you heard, I live in South Carolina. It's a state that has very few Catholics, actually. For a while, I actually moved to Wisconsin, partially to be in a place where there are more Catholics and just more like-minded people to myself. Because of COVID, I had to go back to South Carolina. But I've gotten to the point now at 32 where I've come across a number of bad men, both Catholics and non-Catholics, that all they do want is to just sleep with you. As you were talking about a little bit earlier on the show, there's other ones who they're very odd people, and they haven't met anyone by 32 or by older, and there's a reason they're not with someone, or one was a sex offender. There's just a lot of strange guys, and I've actually gotten to the point where I've actually given up on looking for people. I've dated 10, 12 people probably that I don't even look anymore. I've been on the Catholic dating sites. I've been to social things. My parish in South Carolina here of people that are between the ages of like 20 and 40 that are single. I think there's me and two young men. That's it. The only parish in the county. There's 2 or 3 others in the surrounding counties that have less than 100 families apiece. So I'm very Catholic, and I've kind of almost given up on looking for a husband, even though I felt like my calling from God is to be married, not to be a sister.
Let's see. That I was going to ask you next. What do you think your calling from God might be? But you're sure that God has set your heart on marriage. Let me ask you something, Catherine. Have you prayed about this before the Lord in adoration at all?
Yeah, many times.
Many times. Okay, good. Because I remember meeting a young man in Singapore in an adoration chapel who was literally prostrate on the ground praying, and he was a good-looking young man. He had what I first noticed actually was his suit, 100% cotton, beautiful suit, and so I said, wow, I was just enamored with the guy for whatever reason. So when he got up from praying, he was walking to the door, because in those chapels you have to take your shoes off and stuff. So I went over to him and I said, hey, I don't mean to disturb you, but I introduced myself. I told him why I was there. I was there doing a mission in the parish. I said, I noticed you obviously I could tell by your suit you do something really important, but you took time to spend that time before the Lord. He goes, yeah, I'm an investment banker. And, I work, 70 hours a week. And I often don't have time to do a full hour, but, I come when I can. I said, wow, your girlfriend must be so happy to have a guy like you in her life. And he laughed. He goes, I don't have a girlfriend. I'm praying for my future wife. And I was like, oh, man, this guy totally gets it. Totally gets it. With everything he's got going on in his life, he still feels it's important to take time to pray for his future spouse. So one of the things I would recommend, you're already praying in adoration, which number one is what I would recommend. And also, God, you have to be patient and wait on God. God works in his time, and God's timing is always perfect. And when you go to adoration, pray for that future spouse. Don't just pray, well, God, just bring somebody. No, pray for that man that God is going to bring into your life. Pray that he's holy. Pray that he, is looking at the big picture, that he really wants to get to know you, and that he's willing to literally to die for you, not just physically die, but to die to himself, to die to everything that separates him from God's love, so that he can focus his entire life on being with you. And Catherine, I told you heard me talk about the cohabitating couple. And when I go through that example, what I say at the end is I say to the guys, look, you couldn't answer that question I asked about you. That would you still, if that accident were to happen to your fiance tomorrow, would you still marry her? And they can't answer the question. Let me tell you what my answer would be. I would go to my bishop. I would have him temporarily suspend my faculties to function as a deacon so I can spend the rest of my life taking care of my wife. Because when I stood at that altar and I put that ring on, I meant every word that came out of my mouth. And if you're not ready for a relationship like that, then don't get married. Bam! Just like that. Because look, playtime's over. We have to prepare people to receive a sacrament, a sacrament of the Holy Catholic Church, not to look good and not make them look good for pictures. And so I would continue your prayer, pray for not just that God brings someone into your life, but pray for that person specifically, just whoever that may be, and be patient and wait on God, because, and ultimately, that Catherine, marriage anticipates the wedding feast of heaven. And really the only one that can satisfy the deepest longing desire of our hearts is God. Marriage points toward that, but what we're really looking forward to is the Revelation 19, verse 9. Blessed are those who are invited to the wedding feast of the Lamb. So thank you so much, Catherine. And please know that you will be in my prayers. I'm sure all the EWTN family and the Beacon of Truth listeners will be praying for you as well. Well, today we're talking about getting prepared, dating for matrimony. Dating, what should that look like in our culture today? How should we prepare ourselves and evaluating the young man or the young woman in our life? What should dating look like? And we'd love to hear your experience of dating. We just heard Catherine's experience, and would love to hear from you. The phone number to give us a call to on Beacon of Truth is 833-288-3986. Again, that's 833-288-3986. Just like Kathy has done, calling from Virginia, listening on Sirius XM 130. Kathy, welcome to Beacon of Truth.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, what would you like to share with us today?
Well, I have a wonderful daughter who's 42 years old, and she teaches in an all-girls Catholic school. She lives at home with us, and all she really wants is to be married and have children. She's very faithful Catholic. She is a pure girl. She goes to adoration on Saturdays, every Saturday, and she's a wonderful aunt to her two nephews and niece, but she longs to be married and have children. Like I said, she's 42, so I just want to know how best to help her. I pray every day. I pray every day to the Blessed Mother to help her find a husband. But like I said, unless she finds some state trooper to stop her on the highway, she's not meeting a man. So I just don't know how to help her do that. She's gone to Catholic Mass, and the men that are her age want women that are 20 years old.
Yeah. Boy, I wish I had an answer for you, Kathy. I don't. When I met my wife, I met my wife at a wedding, and I never intended to meet anyone. I did not go there to meet anyone. I went there to support my friend and his fiance that were getting married, and I went to support them. I didn't go there to meet anybody, and so God put this person in my life, and I mean, I don't know what else she could do. I mean, you said she's going to Mass, she's going to adoration. It sounds like she's doing all the right things to try to meet guys. And that's why I'm working, and me and so many others are working hard with Catholic men, to try to get these guys to wake up and realize there are amazing women of faith that are out there that that really want to give themselves totally and completely in a relationship of love and communion to form that holy family like Jesus and Mary and Joseph had, and to get guys to understand and to really recognize what it means to be a man, what it means to live your spirituality as a man from the cross of Jesus Christ, what it means to serve, protect, and defend. That's our calling by God, whether that's in a family with wife and children, whether that's in priesthood, we're called to have that relationship. And so, I don't have just a simple answer what she can do to meet guys. I mean, there's some people that have success with the Catholic dating services, but as we heard, Catholic experience, that wasn't her experience. So, I think she just has to continue to pray. Then again, and pray for the man who may be the man that God puts in her life. That's why I wish I had more for you, Kathy, but we'll continue to pray for your daughter. Thank you so much. We're talking about dating for matrimony, right? We're talking about the dating relationship and what should that look like in preparation for marriage. The phone number to call to be with us is 833-288-3986. And Betsy is calling from Louisville, Kentucky, listening on Holy Family Radio. Betsy, welcome to Beacon of Truth.
Hi. I have just heard a previous caller talking about her, her experiences, in waiting to date for marriage and having been kind of in a similar position, but now being engaged. I just wanted to call in and kind of offer hope there. Yes, I was waiting to start to date for it was a long, grueling journey of probably about 5 years, and finally my now fiance. And I think that time of waiting, although definitely grueling, was God was preparing my heart to be able to know who I was, and to then be able to ask, expect respect in my now relationship. And just to be confident enough to say, like, I want respect and I want love. And that was, my, fiance found that attractive in me, and was one of the things, that kind of just helped to make a dating relationship that was for matrimony.
Wow, Betsy, I love that. And I particularly love the insight that you said I had to get to know myself. I remember talking to a couple who was struggling in marriage, and one of the things that the woman said was, I wish I would have known myself better, before she entered into the relationship. So that's key, what you said. And again, we have to wait on God. God works in his time, and God's timing is always perfect. Well, I wish we could have got to the other callers, but the clock has us beat today. So thank you so much, everybody, for being part of the program. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about sacred tradition. We're going to make a connection between, a sacred tradition and our everyday lived experience. Remember, you can stream today's show by visiting Podcast Central at EWTN.com/radio. And may Almighty, until we meet again, until we're together again, may Almighty God bless you, keep you, and protect you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you all, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Hi, this is Father